The Oromo people are a Cushitic ethnic group native to the Oromia region of Ethiopia and parts of northern Kenya. They speak the Oromo language, also called Afan Oromo, which is part of the Cushitic branch of the Afro-Asiatic language family. They are one of the largest ethnic groups in Ethiopia. East Africa regions with significant populations of Oromos are in Ethiopia, Kenya and Somalia. The Oromo were originally nomadic, semi-pastoralist people who later would conquer large swaths of land during their expansions. After the settlement, they would establish kingdoms in the Gaib regions and dynasties in Abyssinia. The Oromo people traditionally used the Gada system as the primary form of governance. A leader is elected by the Gada system and their term lasts 8 years, with an election taking place at the end of those 8 years. Although most modern Oromos are Muslims and Christians, about 3% practice Wakafana, the native ancient Cushitic monotheistic religion of Oromos. Historical linguistics and comparative ethnology studies suggest that the Oromo people probably originated around the lakes Lake Chubahir and Lake Chamo. They are a Cushitic people, and prior to their expansions, they inhabited only the region of what is now modern-day North Kenya and southern Ethiopia. The aftermath of the 16th century Ethiopian Adal War led Oromos to move to the north. While Oromo people have lived in the region for a long time, the ethnic mixture of peoples who have lived here is unclear. The Oromos increased their numbers through assimilation, Midika, Mogasa and Gudufacha, as well as the inclusion of mixed peoples, Gabaro. The native names of the territories were replaced by the name of the Oromo clans, who settled on it while the indigenous people were assimilated. According to Herbert S. Lewis, both the Oromo and the Somali people originated in southern Ethiopia, but the Somali expanded to the east and north much earlier than the Oromo, and the Oromo lived only in southern Ethiopia and northern Kenya until the Oromo expansion began about 1530 and start to assimilation of Hadia and others. Historical evidence suggests that the Oromo people were already established in the southern highlands in or before the 15th century, and that at least some Oromo people were interacting with other Ethiopian ethnic groups. Subsequent colonial-era documents mention and refer to the Oromo people as Gala, which has now developed derogatory connotations, but these documents were generally written by members of other ethnic groups. The earliest recorded mention of the Oromos comes from the Italian-Venetian cartographer Fra Mauro, who notes a Gala river south of the Awash River in his famous Mappamondo, or Map of the World, completed in 1460. This reference indicates that the Oromos inhabited this area of southern Ethiopia for at least a century and a half before their expansion north. As early as the 12th century, all aspects of Oromo life was governed by the Gada system, a political and ritual system based on an egalitarian ethos, age-grade social organization and highly structured institutions. Under Gada, every 8 years, the Oromo would choose by consensus 9 leaders known as Salgan Ya'i Borana, the 9 Borana assemblies. The first detailed history of the Oromo people comes from the Ethiopian monk Bahre, who wrote Zinahu la Gala, or History of the Gala, in 1593. The large-scale expansion is referred to as the Great Oromo Migrations. According to Richard Pankhurst, a British-born Ethiopian historian, this expansion is linked to the attempted conquest of the Ethiopian Empire by Imam Ahmad ibn Ibrahim, which created a political and military vacuum that allowed the Oromo to move relatively unhindered into both the Ethiopian Empire and the Adal Sultanate. The early 16th and 17th century witnessed the gradual integration of the Oromo into the Ethiopian Empire. Emperor Susenyos I, who came to power with Oromo support, did much to integrate them into the political establishment of the Christian state. Having grown up among the Oromo, he was fluent in their language and admired their way of life. He employed Oromo warriors, military tactics and combat formations against his rivals for the throne. Once in power, he filled high-level offices with his Oromo supporters and settled various Oromo groups throughout much of Gojam and Begemder. Under Susenyos' successors, many Oromos would continue to rise to positions of prominence in imperial service, and for a period even change the official language of the empire from Amharic to Oromifa during the rule of the half-Oromo emperor Eoas I. They would establish dynasties such as the Yeju dynasty that would be de facto rulers of Ethiopian Empire from 1784 to 1853 during the Zemene Mesafint. They would particularly have control over the provinces of Begemder and Gojam. Another Oromo dynasty that would rise in the northern Ethiopian highlands was the Islamic Wara Himano, 1580–1916, which transformed Wollo into a veritable Islamic state in the heartland of Christian Ethiopia. The Wara Himano would convert many Amhara Christians to Islam during its rule, and at the zenith of its power, the Wara Himano had their hegemony accepted in the various parts of Wollo: Ambasel, Kalu, Borena, Wara Ilu, and Amhara Sayint. Notable rulers such as Ras Mikhail of Wollo and the uncrowned emperor of Ethiopia, Lij Iyasu, 1913–1916, descend from this ruling family. In the late 16th century, the Oromos had settled in the territories south of the Abai River in western Ethiopia. Within 60 years of their arrival, 5 Oromo states would emerge in the Gaib region, such as Gera, Goma, Guma, Jimma, and Limu Enerea. These states arose through the transformation of pastoralism to agriculture due to the fertile and adequately watered land of the region. This increased the importance of agriculture and led to the subsequent rise of a land-owning class. The rich natural environment produced commodities that were in high demand and led to the rise of a strong merchant class. These changes allowed the Gada officials to acquire more authority and convert their elective offices into permanent monarchical institutions. In the eastern part of the country, especially in Arsi, Baale and Haraga, the Oromo, who lived within the immediate periphery of the city of Harar, adopted agriculture as their primary occupation, mostly to engage in trade with the inhabitants of the walled city. According to oral and literary evidence, certain Somali and Oromo clans fought each other throughout the 16th, 17th and 18th centuries, particularly near their eastern borders. In the last quarter of the 19th century, the Oromo tribes and kingdoms fell under the rule of Menelik II of Shewa. Beginning in the 1870s, the Kingdom of Shewa recaptured one Oromo territory after the other, with unpreceded speed owing to the modern weapons acquired from the international arms trade and the disunity among various Oromo groups. The manner this conquest was carried out determined the form of administrations that was subsequently set up in the newly conquered areas. In areas where the Shewans encountered resistance, such as Arsi, the conquering generals were installed as governors and the Amhara soldiers.